Hello and welcome to the Cube Vanguard. Today is special. I'm starting a new series called Kickstart Your Kasten or Kickstart Your Kubernetes Backup with Kasten. Now, why am I doing this? And how am I going to do this? Well, first of all, this is a new challenge. I want to bring out a recording every single day. They might not be too long, but I want to be disciplined and bring them out every single day. Why the rush? Well, there's two reasons for the rush. First reason for doing this at all is in the recent past, I've had more and more people ask me about Kubernetes. So back in the day, 2019, 2020, when I started to study Kubernetes, there was a whole wave of people studying Kubernetes and getting interested in it and learning it. And then it kind of died off. Now there's a few factors which are, again, getting people more interested in Kubernetes and learning it. First factor is hypervisors. So as we know, there's been a bit of disruption in the hypervisor industry, and people, organizations are looking for alternatives. And there's two very interesting alternatives for the hypervisor we've all used in the past. First one's from Red Hat, it's OpenShift. It's a very powerful hypervisor, and more people are getting interested in it and are taking it on. SUSE also has their SUSE virtualization harvester, also a very good harvest, a very good hypervisor. The problem with these two hypervisors is they're based on KubeVirt, and KubeVirt runs on Kubernetes. Now, KubeVirt is like KVM, but inside Kubernetes. The problem is you can't just jump in and try to do hypervisor stuff at that level without understanding what's underneath. I mean, you can try it, but it's kind of dangerous. So obviously, people have decided to learn what's underneath. I've had multiple questions from people saying, hey, Jeff, how did you start learning about it? What's the best way to go forward? And I normally in the past say, well, look at my videos or other videos or courses on Udemy from the past. But I thought, no, let's do something fresh and let's do it from zero to hero. I mean, absolute zero, starting with the VM. I'm sorry I keep looking over here. I'm looking to see if my microphone's working because I actually tried this before and I went on for a good 15 minutes and then I noticed my microphone, the little, wasn't going back and forth, which was quite annoying. So every single day, a video. Not necessarily very long, but people can go along with it and learn Kubernetes. Now, the second big reason why I'm doing this is because I went to a webinar a couple weeks ago from Kasten talking about Kasten 8.5. And honestly, this is not marketing fluff. I mean, I don't work for Kasten anyways. This is real excitement. A couple things they mentioned got me really back in the game, so to speak. First of all, universal FLR. FLR, what is that? File level recovery. Now, as you know, there was limited file level recovery in Kasten. It existed for OpenShift and I believe Harvester, but that was it. With universal FLR, you will be able to leverage file level recovery in all KubeVirt installations, including just vanilla KubeVirt, where we're going to set up KubeVirt on its own and then leverage it. Okay, so that's wonderful, but it doesn't stop there. Also, universal FLR will work with containers. Yes, you will have a container. You'll be able to mount your container. So I'm assuming mount. I haven't seen it yet, but you'll be able to do file level restores from your container. That is really exciting. I haven't seen that before. I mean, I've seen it in the sense that, you can go into a container and copy things in and out and whatnot, but this is, from a data protection standpoint, very, very interesting. The other thing that's got me really exciting is they talked about a new blueprint they're bringing out in Kasten 8.5, and I'm going to let you guess what that blueprint's for. Yes, AI, a blueprint for backing up AI. Very interesting. The slides, which you can get, by the way, were fascinating. Now, people may or may not know that AI loves Kubernetes. It loves to run on Kubernetes. They're just kind of built for each other. And so the question arises, how do you protect this? Do you use conventional means? Are there any differences you need to incorporate? Because as we all know, for different applications, there are different things you have to do. That's why you have things like application-aware backups, so that you actually back up your application correctly. Remember, no one cares about backups. They only care about restores. So you might have successful backups, whatever you're using, but if it's not the proper type of backup, the backup which is actually backing up what you want backed up, guess what? You'll restore something that doesn't work, which is useless, right? So you want successful restores, and in order to successfully restore, you have to properly back up. And this is what they want to do with blueprints, AI blueprints. Okay, so if you start now, by the time Kasten comes out, you'll have a working understanding of Kasten, and we will talk about some Kubernetes concepts going along so you can at least follow them and be ready. Obviously, Kubernetes is a deep dive, so what I'm going to say in this series is going to be pretty much superficial level. So you'd want to do more studying if you get the opportunity, but it's a start. All right, let's start and go into what we have set up here. My hypervisor, so this is going to be a nested installation. I'm going to nest, I'm going to nest in a VM Kubernetes with KubeVirt. This is Proxmox. I have my home lab. I've created the VM, and right off the bat, because it's going to have KubeVirt, which is going to have a virtual machine in it, I can't be too cheap on the resources. Now, you could probably go lower than this, but I want this to actually work more or less quickly. So the memory, I'm giving it 32 gigabytes, and I'm giving it 8 cores. Okay, so that's important. But what's essential is this. If you're in Proxmox, to choose the type host, because that is virtualization is enabled in that. If you choose the default one, which is the x86 64, can't remember the exact name, we can find it here, but nevertheless, it does not have virtualization. And what's going to happen is it just won't work. Your KubeVirt won't work. So that's what you have to remember. Very important. Host as the processor. I'm using the minimal ISO for Rocky Linux. Now, Rocky Linux, Jeff, why are you using Rocky Linux? Because Veeam uses Rocky Linux now. I've had experience with CentOS in production. I've worked with Red Hat. With Rocky somewhat, but not as much. Probably not a huge difference, but still, if you don't work with something every day, you're not going to know it as intimately as if you do. So Ubuntu I know very well now. I know what to expect. No surprises. Rocky, I might get some surprises. So since Veeam is using that, a reminder, Veeam now runs on Linux. Okay, they have an appliance. It's wonderful, and it's built on Rocky Linux. Okay, so I want to get more used to this, and the only way to get you more used to it and to learn it is to use it. And there are some differences, nothing too terrifying, especially, I mean, Linux is Linux at the end of the day, but with some of the installation steps, I found some funny moments, which I'll point out here. So we're starting from the very beginning. Let's start up our VM. So here we go. We're going to start it off. First of all, I'm going to double check to make sure I've got the order, the boot order correctly. I don't even have a boot order. Isn't that wonderful? So we're going to start that off, and we'll pick those two. And now I will fire this off. Okay, so it gives you a choice. Obviously, we don't want to install in test mode. You could install in FIPS mode, but I don't want anything to be any more complicated. I want it to be very simple for my demo. So off we go. And unlike Ubuntu, this will bring up a nice little UI for the installation. That doesn't mean there's going to be a UI after that or GUI after that, but it will bring up this UI, this user interface, which is quite convenient. Does have some caveats though, which I will show you. And I had some weird things when I was dealing with 9.5. This is 9.7 Rocky Linux. There is Rocky Linux 10, but I noticed the Veeam VSA is on Rocky 9, one of the Rocky 9 versions. So I think it's better to stick with that. So here's this UI I was talking about. Very nice, very convenient. Press continue. And here's where some fun things start right off the bat. So it won't let you continue unless you do some basic things. And you can see them here. So we got to set a root password. Fair enough. I'm not going to lock the root account out, and I'm not going to allow it through Secure Shell. Now, this is my first moment. I didn't get stuck, but I was kind of bewildered for a few minutes because I intuitively ran over to the lower right-hand corner expecting the next button, and it wasn't there. Then I ran up to help, and only after a few minutes did I look way back on the opposite, so it's the opposite, and see done. And I think that was the same for Fedora or CentOS. I can't really remember, but I just forgotten. Same thing here. I'm going to create a user. I'm going to call it Kasten. I'm going to make this user an administrator, which means I will have sudo access, which we will need. And I'm going to require password. So you could just say, don't require password, but that's kind of like the absolute, what they call the opposite of zero trust, full trust. Anyone can log in, do whatever they want. Then you have to pick a installation destination. And this is fun because I went in here the first time and went, okay, I'm going to pick this, and then did my done. I was really proud of myself. I remembered where the done button was and nothing happened. Why? Because when I log in here, when you log in, it's already checked. So my intuitive nature is you go in and you got to check something, right? But they've checked it already. So you can go in and just press done. Now it does give you the opportunity to add more disks, storage configuration. You can have a custom configuration. You can use encryption. But still, I unchecked that. I did this and then wondered why it was unhappy. And then I realized that I'd unchecked it. So silly. Go back to here. We're done. Now, I'm also going to, so it'll check that. Now it's ready to go. I could continue installation, but I want to set an IP address. With 9.5, this was interesting. I did this and it didn't click in. It still went DHCP. Now, perhaps I was rushing. Okay, perhaps I was rushing. But I'm pretty certain I did that. So let's change this. I want to change this IP address. Right now it's DHCP. So I want to change that. So let's go to IP settings, IP4. We're going to make it manual. And we're going to add the IP address. I've already set this up in my DNS. We will give it a net mask and a gateway. DNS servers. I'm going to give it 2. And search domain. I will add this too. A little bit superfluous, but. And I'm all set. Not going to add any roots. Okay, we're going to press save. Okay. And it's got that. I don't see the IP address yet. Oh, host name I want to change too, by the way. Call this Kasten K01. So that's kind of neat. It's over there on the side, right? So what I suggest people do when you're using a new install and it's a UI, it's not command line, don't just rush. Look around the screen because things will kind of pop up. So we're going to apply that. And current host name, so it's there. Okay, great. And done. Now, I don't see the IP address up here yet. Again, I did all that with 9.5 Rocky, and it didn't click in. So let's just go back in there and see if it has. Yes, it has here. So, okay. So this time might have worked. Maybe I forgot to click something. I was talking and working at the same time, which never works out very well. We'll press install, begin installation. This will take a little while. So I'll pause the video and come back when it's done. All done. And I am not going to reboot the system because obviously it'll reboot with the ISO. So we're going to just stop the... In fact, I'd already picked... That's incorrect. I did pick the... No, I had the C... I'm sorry. Yeah, I had the CD-ROM pick. So stop it and I'm going to remove... I'll just remove the CD-ROM. That's the easiest thing to do. I could have changed the boot order, but since it's a minimal installation, there's no reason for me to keep the CD-ROM, so we will just remove it. And I'll double check that boot order here in options. We're all set. Okay, let's start off. And the next step is going to be to add some extras into the default installation because it is minimal. It's very minimal. And here also, when I did my install with 9.5, I ran into some issues just out of the blue with a whole bunch of error messages about the installation of the update. And I got through them, but it was a little bit strange. Let's see if 9.7 is any better. So I'm Kasten. That's my username. And here I am. Remember, we did add it to the wheel group, so it can do sudo. So let's try right off the bat to install our updates. So sudo. Now, right off the bat, with CentOS, with Fedora, with Red Hat, there's been a whole bunch of changes in the update methods. I remember back in the day just doing RPMs. Now RPMs are still the packages, but there's all sorts of helper programs that have emerged. I remember when there was Yumx. Now there's DNF. So I don't really know the history of that, but unlike Ubuntu or Debian base, which have had apps since I don't know when, there's been changes here. So DNF, and I think it's just install updates and a Y, so that's similar. And I put my password in, but let's see what happens. Because on 9.5, it came up with all these errors, and I hadn't done anything yet. I was like, wow. Oh, wait a minute. Did I change something? Yes, I did install updates. So right off the bat, it's because I'm talking and doing this at the same time. You're not going to install updates. You're going to update. There we go. Okay. This looks okay. Okay, that's a relief. That's a relief because I did this on 9.5 and it came up saying there was a whole bunch of conflicts and I hadn't installed anything yet. So I had to do this option of not best. So I did the same thing, update, but not best. So in other words, I don't want the best. I want the stable, I guess. But on 9.7, we're okay. So that could just be a problem with earlier versions. Here, we're all set and it is going through without any issues. Okay, I have my little notes over here just in case. we'll let this finish. And then I'm going to install some extras. Now, this is a minimal installation, so there's no GUI. But for the purpose of this series, I want to have a GUI because it's easier. You can have like a local browser and then see your Kasten there and not go all over the place. So we're going to install one. But I didn't want to install the default one that comes with the normal Rocky big ISO, which is like 20 gigabytes, because it's heavy. It's GNOME. It's wonderful if you're using it as desktop, but if you want something lean and mean and you're only using the UI for just going into your browser to check something, it's superfluous. And I want to give as many resources as possible to the KubeVirt. So that's done. So what are we going to install next? So I want to install extra packages. And to do this in Rocky, you have to have this EPL release that you have to install. So first and foremost, I want to check to see if Secure Shell is working, because I hate working through the console like this. So let's check and see if it is working. I'll find my command line here. I'm on a Windows laptop. Let's just, there we go. We'll clear this. That was my test from before. So let's try to connect. I'll probably have to, yes, that's what I thought, because I did a test earlier. I'll have to remove my setting in my Secure Shell so that it'll be fresh. And I will want to copy it so that I don't have to every time put in the password. I'll copy my certificate over, and now I'll be able to log in. And there I am. Great. So now I'm in the OS, the Rocky OS, through my normal terminal, which I like, in Windows Subsystem for Linux. So what do I want to do first? Because I'm going to have a GUI, and I'm going to need a browser. I'm going to have an extra repository added. And they call this EPL. It's extra packages, and it's very simple to do. It's sudo dnf install EPL release. That's it, with a Y. And it will install this, and this will allow me to install the extra pieces I want. First and foremost being XFCE desktop. There's also Mate, which is pretty good, but XFCE I like. It's very, very lean and mean. And there's a command that an option for DNF called group install, and that will install everything it needs, all dependencies. So this will be quite a bit because it's going to have to install X Windows. And it is installing, so there is extra packages for Enterprise Linux 9. Okay, and about 458 packages, and it'll go and install all of those. So this is installing the X Windows environment, everything it needs for the GUI. But it's going to be less than if I'd done the big install of the 20 gigabyte ISO. After this, I would install also XRDP. There are things like VNC. I've never been a fan of VNC. I don't know why. I always find that something doesn't work, or something's slow, or my mouse gets trapped somewhere. So RDP seems to work, and XRDP does. I know some people like free RDP. I haven't used it, but I like XRDP. And the only other thing I'm installing this, apart from the Kubernetes distribution, is going to be Chrome to use as a browser. So this should finish pretty quickly. There we go. And now we will install XRDP, which is in the extra packages. So if I tried to install it beforehand, and the same, by the way, with XFCE, it wouldn't have been there. I said, oh, can't find it. So remember that. So we're going to do DNF install XRDP. Found it very small, it'll be very quick. Now we're going to want to enable this right away and start it if you want to go in right away. So we will do a sudo systemctl enable XRDP. Okay, that means that when we restart the operating system, it'll start by default. And we'll start it right now. Okay, and let's check the status. So systemctl, as you know, very important command, it's running. Now, the question that's interesting is that with 9.5, I did 2 installations when I was practicing. And one time, it worked without any problems. The second time, the firewall came on. And honestly, I didn't do anything different. I don't think I did. I don't know. So let's just see if that actually happens. So I'm going to have to reboot anyways. I don't think I installed the UI, but it's not running by... Oh, sorry. Another big thing I missed. We've installed the GUI, but if I reboot now, it's not going to start off. It's still pointing at a different startup method, right? So we have to do this command here, which is the set default target, graphical target. Otherwise, it'll just start the way it always does, okay? So we're going to reboot, and the first thing I'm going to check after that is whether or not the firewall has been turned on. So we're going to sudo reboot. Shouldn't take too long. It's a VM, and we will see. So the final step of this part might be that I have to use the firewall-cmd command to enable RDP. So we'll take a few seconds for that. Should be relatively quick. I can go back to the console and check, in fact. And look, it's up. And it not only is it up, but as you can see, it's now come up in the console with the GUI. All right. So what did we want to check? Well, first of all, let's go on Secure Shell. There we are. We're in there. Let's try RDP. My suspicion is the firewall will be on. I think probably the first time I did it, I made a change or something. It didn't do it, but let's take a look. Okay, definitely. It's not. Okay. So as suspected, we have to open it up. And there's a command here, which I learned these commands before once, because I don't really turn the firewall on in my lab normally with Ubuntu, and it's not on by default. But when I did the Linux certification from the Linux Foundation, they gave you a choice of what distribution type to pick for the exam. And I don't know what I was doing, but I picked the CentOS instead of the Debian based. So it was like, oh no. And I don't know about looking to change that. I thought, okay, well, I'll force myself. So I had to make certain I knew all this beforehand. And one of the things I remember was this firewall stuff was all over the place, and the permanent at the end. I think well, I won't tell you any questions that I remember because I don't remember any. But if I was making a question, I'd probably, change firewall, and then people forget to put permanent. What happens after reboot? So I don't remember anything about that exam. I passed, but I don't remember anything about it. All right, and another thing you have to do is reload. This is another thing I would nail people with. Like, I've done it, it's not working. Well, because you didn't reload the firewall rules. Okay, so let's try this again. Voila. All righty, so we're all set. And I will log in with my Kasten username. It'll offer me a tour. I don't go for the tours. Too expensive. No thanks. And as we can see here, by default, you've got a bunch of things. Here's my XFCE terminal. Now, Chrome. How do we install Chrome? I have recently installed applications using Flatpak. I didn't even know about it before, and it's pretty cool. The idea about Flatpak is, opposed to using apt-get or apt in Debian and DNF or Yumx or whatever's happening in the Red Hat world, Flatpak is universal. You can use it on any Linux distribution. I've used this on Arch Linux. But what's even more interesting about it is it creates the application its own kind of sandbox, kind of like so that it cannot be affected by anything, or its dependencies can't affect anything else. Pros and cons about this, I don't know. I've read some people saying, well, it adds more resource usage, perhaps, because remember using, I don't know, I'm not certain, but I thought maybe try that here. Now, it's installed by default here. The only thing is I do not know how to install Chrome, so let's just Google this. Flatpak install Chrome. This one you're winging it. You haven't done it yet, and you're just going to see what happens. So it looks like you have to add a repository. Let's try that. No errors, okay. And then sudo flatpak install com.google.chrome. Interesting. We'll try that. Yes. Yes. Off it goes. And if this works, I'll be very happy. So this time, everything's worked perfectly. Sometimes you install things and everything goes wrong, can go wrong. And perhaps the frustration sets in and you start ticking too quickly or you make typos. But sometimes it's just smooth. And that's what's happened today. So our Rocky Linux is almost complete. And if we get Chrome going and we'll actually test it, then we'll be even more happy. And that'll be the conclusion of today's video. Tomorrow's video will be installing K3S, which will be a lot of fun. Let's just check out the Chrome. This is XFCE. So I see it there. Let's open it up. Interesting. So it wants a new keyring. So choose the password for your keyring. I don't want to send statistics. Fine. And there we are. I want to try that again. Hopefully it only asks once, right? I said I'm new to Flatpak. There I am. Let's just, let's go to K3S website, see if it works. Boom, it works. Beautiful. And let's try that again. I want to see if every time it actually comes up with that. It would be quite annoying. No, of course not. Okay, great. We're all set. So that was part one. We are done. What have we done? We've booted up an ISO, a minimal ISO Rocky installation, and we've installed Rocky. We've also added the extra repository for Rocky, and we added a GUI desktop on the minimal install, and we have added XRDP and Google. So we are now set for the next part of our installation, which will come tomorrow, which will be the lightweight K3S Kubernetes distribution. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you tomorrow.